Well, thank you very much, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a huge pleasure to be back with you again and to have the opportunity to share some thoughts with you at the start of your 75th anniversary Congress. And let me begin with those words of congratulation to the Scottish Secondary Teachers Association on this landmark occasion. I just was handed, as I came in, this commemorative brochure, and I'm very grateful to the SSTA for delving back through its records. It's reassured me enormously that the issues that members of the teaching profession are concerned about today are largely the issues that they seem to have been concerned about in May 1954, October 1946, and at various other moments over the last 75 years. So it doesn't make me feel that particularly more in the firing line about issues than perhaps some of my predecessors would have felt over the last 75 years. But that's in no way to diminish the importance of the issues that the SSTA raises with me from time to time. And let me begin with where I think we've made significant progress in the course of the last 12 months since I last addressed this gathering, and that's on the issue of pay and conditions for the teaching profession. And I'm very pleased that we managed to secure agreement around the pay deal over the last few months. It's been a long campaign of discussion and debate and negotiation, and I was very pleased that we managed to get to an agreement earlier on this year with the professional associations and with our local authority partners, and that we now have that pay deal in the process of being implemented. And of course what that will deliver for members of the teaching profession is an increase of a minimum of 13% over by the time we get to April 2020, and that's before we consider any elements of progression. So in anybody's book, that is a very significant increase in pay for a profession within our country. In my view, it is a richly deserved pay increase, and I'm glad that we've been able to secure that agreement. Of course, I was particularly grateful to members of the SSTA who gave their support at an earlier stage to the offers that the government were making. Indeed, if we'd followed the views of SSTA members, it would have cost the government less money than it's currently going to cost the government, but you know, I don't feel any kind of ill will about that whatsoever. So I'm glad we've got to the point of agreement, because what I think that allows us to do is to bring to a close the discussions around pay for a significant period, and allows us to concentrate our energy on some of the other issues that are of vital importance to affecting the education and the learning of young people within Scotland. And I want to talk through some of those questions in detail today. But before I do that, I want to just talk about some of my hopes arising out of the pay deal that we have agreed with the profession. Because the pay deal is not just a deal about pay, it's also about workload and professional development. Because I believe all of these factors must be part of the discussion that we have about how we advance the agenda on the conditions and the contribution of teachers to the education system in Scotland. So the pay deal, as I indicated, delivers an increase of 13% by April 2020 as a minimum to all teachers, and will be more significant for those at the lower end of the pay scale. But what it also delivers is an extension in 2019-20 of in-service day opportunities which are there to support professional development. One of the points that has been raised with me frequently by members of the profession is that while there is an appetite to take forward initiatives in professional development, there aren't the practical opportunities to enable that to happen because of the limitations on supply cover and other issues within schools. So I've responded to that by putting in place 2 additional in-service days in 2019-20, which are designed to foster professional development and designed to foster collaboration, not just within individual schools, but between schools, between local authorities, across regional improvement collaboratives, to make sure that we have a practical and tangible opportunity to be able to take forward some of the collaborative agenda that the OECD in their 2015 report on Scottish education encouraged us practically to do. And I look forward to seeing how that work is taken forward at individual school and local authority level. But the deal also related to issues around workload. And I'll talk a lot about my thinking about how we tackle the workload issue, because I recognise that to be a central point in the concerns raised with me by the teaching profession. We've had a number of attempts over the years to try to tackle the workload issue. We've had reducing bureaucracy task forces, we've all met. We've had thematic inspections of local authorities about steps taken to implement that work on reducing workload through the reducing bureaucracy task force. We've identified the local authorities where we needed to see improvement in the activity they were taking forward to reduce workload. We have taken a number of steps to revisit that and to reinforce that and to secure commitments from individual local authorities about how they reduce or how they commit to reducing workload. So we've done all these things which I would readily recognise are essentially top-down mechanisms. They are government and local authorities trying to make a judgment about how we can reduce your workload. And I increasingly am coming to the view that the best route to reduce the workload of teachers is to empower teachers to make the judgments through professional confidence about what contributes to the educational benefit of young people and what does not. I'm quite struck, again, in the Diamond Jubilee work, if I can find the reference, that one of the comments that's in here is about the fact that there is workload being undertaken which is not contributing to the educational benefit of young people. And I think that's a problem that we continue to face. But the means of solving that issue, to me, will not be delivered by me sitting in St Andrew's House saying, right, we'll do this, and this will make a dramatic difference on the ground. Because in individual schools and local authorities around the country, some of that may be relevant and some of that may be irrelevant. So the way to solve this issue is to have a confident profession that can make a judgment about what is contributing to the educational value and the educational experience of young people, and to make that discerning choice about how time is spent in a particular way. If I cite to you one particular conversation that had a significant effect on my thinking in this respect, was with a teacher in Aberdeen, when I was undertaking a series of roundtable discussions with groups of teachers, privately, just me and groups of teachers, who had written to the First Minister and I about their concerns about the profession and the education system. And this teacher explained to me that he was a history teacher, a secondary history teacher, and he explained to me that he felt that the core issue he needed to be able to be conversant with was the delivery of the curriculum, of his capacity and capability to deliver an exciting curriculum to his students, and then to know where each student was in their educational journey so that he could take the steps to enhance the progress and the development of those young people, and to be able to report and to account for where that individual was. That was his professional judgment about the content of the curriculum and his professional judgment about the progress that the young person was making. So he felt that was the essential elements that he had to do. The problem was, he then was asked by a faculty head who was not a history specialist, who he said was a lovely guy, but wasn't adding value to his educational content, but he was having to report in a fashion to the faculty head to give that faculty head some degree of armour, confidence, to then be able to report to the deputy head, and then the head would ask for it a different way, and then there'd be a separate phalanx of activity undertaken just in case the inspectorate came along, and another phalanx of activity that would come along in case the local authority education department came along, and another phalanx in case, heaven forfend, the education secretary was to darken the door of the school on a dismal day. So his point was, the bit that really mattered was his ability to enliven the curriculum and interpret it rightly and correctly for young people, and his ability to know whether the young people were making it or not making it, and where they were and what their post in the journey was. And the periphery was all the stuff that was a product of fear in the education system. I better do this in case the head asks. I better do this in case the inspectorate come, and various iterations of all of that. Now, the solution to that, if you look at the inspectorate point, for example, the Chief Inspector of Education tells me that she keeps on encountering schools or she hears conversations going on about folks saying, oh, we're just waiting for the box to arrive for the inspection. Apparently the box has never arrived for years, but people are still waiting for the box to arrive for the inspection. And it's part of a culture of fear. Whereas what Education Scotland is now doing is they are rocking up at individual schools to make a judgment about the educational value of what is going on. And what better way to present that, if you take the example of my history teacher that I'm quoting to you, is for that history teacher to account through exemplification and delivery of education as to what is the quality of education that young people are experiencing. What better way to do that, rather than saying, look at my beautifully choreographed cupboard of folders, which explains the whole thing, which the inspectorate will never look at on the model that the inspectorate is now taking forward. So in a sense, the point I'm advancing to you is that workload cannot ever be tackled by me sitting in St Andrew's House saying, this is what it's going to be like. It will only be tackled if we have a cross-system, and this is not just about the profession. It needs a change in behaviour from the government, from local authorities, from Education Scotland, all of which is happening, and actually within schools, because we have to have professional confidence in ourselves and in our colleagues to be able to be confident about the quality of education delivery to young people in Scotland. So my invitation to the profession is to engage in that active dialogue about how we change the culture so that we can tackle the issue of workload. Now, before you go thinking that suddenly this means that what teachers are contributing to the education system will be any lesser amount of time than perhaps is being done just now, I would caution that one of the other things that we want to strengthen is professional development. Because what I see from the profession around the country is a real frustration that it's not got enough opportunity to actually undertake as much professional development and professional dialogue as it would want to take. That's a real frustration. So we've got to try to get rid of the rubbish, the stuff that is distracting, that is not contributing to the educational development of young people, to make sure that we create the space and the capacity to enable professional development to take place. And what's interesting as I go around the education system, and this is where I do feel quite aggrieved about quite a lot of what I read about Scottish education. Nobody sees more of the education, no one who comments on Scottish education sees more of it than me. I've been in 4 schools this week, seeing different practice, different experiences. And I see a lot of professional development going on that teachers are committing a lot of time to doing. At Duncan Riggs Secondary School on Monday night, over 300 professionals were there engaging in understanding various steps of enhancing professional practice that individual schools were demonstrating at a session at 4 o'clock in the afternoon that went on until after 6 o'clock at night. So there is professional commitment to professional development, but we have to make that more endemic within the system, and we have to create more opportunities for it to happen. So, in short, although that's taken me a long time to go through all that detail, there is the pay and workload deal that we have arrived at, I think gives us an opportunity to change the culture of the education system to equip the profession with more capacity and capability to tackle the workload issues about which I think you've been rightly concerned in time. But it also creates the opportunity to properly remunerate the profession and to undertake greater professional development. Now, all of that is crucial so that we can enable the profession to be focused on making the biggest contribution it can make to what I think is the very clear and unmistakable agenda of Scottish education, which is about delivering excellence and equity for all. I was talking to some of your colleagues outside, and one of them reflected on the fact that in the school that they were working in, there was, because of an absence of a long-term head teacher, there was a lack of direction in the school. And I understand that would be a weakness for any school. I accept that completely. And so for the education system, we've got to have clarity of direction. If we don't know what we're going after, we'll not be able to deliver for young people in Scotland. So the clarity of direction in Scottish education, to me, is absolutely crystal clear. We are about delivering excellence and equity for all, and by closing the poverty-related attainment gap in Scottish education. So that's our vision and that's our direction. And to enable that to happen, we've put in place a number of different steps: the Scottish Attainment Challenge, pupil equity funding, and the agenda of empowerment, all of which is about supporting us in our journey to deliver excellence and equity for all. And on the empowerment agenda, there are two key strands that I am pleased that we're engaging with the profession about, which I think is strengthening the delivery of that empowerment agenda. The first is around equipping schools under the leadership of head teachers to have greater flexibility over issues such as curriculum design, over staffing and over finance. Crucial elements of the Head Teachers Charter that's now been agreed jointly with local authorities and now being implemented around the country. The other strand of the essential nature of empowerment, and it relates to all that I've said about workload already, is about the encouragement and the motivation of teacher agency within our education system. That is the prize that I want to go after on the empowerment agenda, that we have a professionally confident teaching profession that is operating through the approach of teacher agency, where there is such professional confidence that the teaching profession is able to innovate, to be flexible, to create, to enliven the curriculum, to meet the needs of young people, to personalise the curriculum to meet the needs of individual young people. And that will only come about if we have that confident system of teacher agency in place. So the agenda of Scottish education is, in my view, very clear as to what we're going after. But of course, there are always some dilemmas, and they play themselves out in the wider debate that's going on about Scottish education just now. And I think they largely play out along two fundamental axes: the debate between central and local control, and the debate between prescription and autonomy. Central and local, prescription and autonomy. And these are two axes of the same debate. We've got an inquiry going on just now in the Education and Skills Committee in Parliament, which is inquiring about the question of subject choice, where there is a lot of debate going on about whether it is right to have 6, 7 or 8 subjects choices in S4, which is roughly the nub of the issue, or, that's the nub of the issue. Should we have 6, 7 or 8 choices at S4? Now, I'm not going to enter into that debate very much at this stage. I'm going to say a little bit more about it in a moment. But part of the charge that's put at me is you should be prescribing. Now, you see, I'm not prepared to do that. Nothing will persuade me to do it, because I don't believe on that axis of debate between central and local that I know better than you and your schools whether you should be doing 6, 7 or 8, because you're the professionals. You're facing the young people. You're the ones engaging with the young people to determine what they need. And in some respects, the imposition, not in some respects, in every respect, the imposition of a fixed, directed, central model is the anathema and contradiction of our curricular approach, because our curricular approach is not a prescriptive approach. The profession, as part of the national debate about curriculum that led to Curriculum for Excellence, argued for more flexibility, argued for more autonomy, argued for more choice about the curriculum. So if we were now to say, well, our response to all of this is to prescribe from the centre, if our response to it is to say this is the way it should be done, to me, we undermine some of the fundamental thinking and tenets of Curriculum for Excellence, and I think that would be a retrograde step for us to take. So in that debate about central local prescription versus autonomy, my thinking is very much on the local and the autonomy side of that argument, because I think that corresponds with what our curriculum requires of us. Our curriculum is not a prescriptive curriculum. It offers young people in the broad general education the breadth of educational opportunity across 8 curricular areas, with a central requirement to ensure that young people have greater capacity in literacy, numeracy and health and well-being. But a broad general education across 8 curricular areas which leads to young people making choices that are appropriate to them, delivered in a flexible fashion around the country. And I think it should be up to professionals at local level, increasingly at school level, to determine what is that model that works best for young people at local level. And that reinforces the thinking behind our curriculum design. But to make that model successful, there have to be, I think, a couple of crucial elements in the process. The first is that there's got to be an upsurge in professional leadership within the teaching profession and an upsurge in professional development. Increasingly, the steps that I've been taking through the redesign of the remit of Education Scotland, the introduction of the regional improvement collaboratives, the encouragement across local authority boundaries to encourage more collaboration, are all about supporting the encouragement of participation in the SCALE headship courses and Columba 1400, are all about strengthening professional leadership and strengthening professional development, and we should concentrate on those principal themes as we take forward this agenda. But there is one other element which is crucial in all of this, and that is trust in the profession. I spent a couple of days earlier on this year at the International Summit of the Teaching Profession in Finland. And there were 2 advantages of that event. The first was that I got to see at first hand, with great case study examples, some of the strength and the characteristics of the strength of the Finnish education system. And secondly, I got to engage in dialogue with 30 other education systems around the world that are judged to be high-performing education systems. Not everybody gets invited to the International Summit of the Teaching Profession, but Scotland got invited because we are judged internationally to be a high-performing education system. And we should be proud of that, and we should hear more about it in our news media. But when I look at the issues that came out of that summit, on curriculum, I basically felt that lots of other countries were looking at what Scotland had done in curriculum reform, and Finland was looking at Scotland in curriculum reform to see the strength of what we had actually undertaken. And in my assessment of all of the dialogue that took place over those few days in Finland, I felt we were in a very strong position in relation to the curriculum development that we had undertaken. But the key area of a lesson from the Finnish education system that I felt we had to learn, and where we needed to strengthen our approach, was about trusting the profession and its professional judgment. And I don't think you trust the profession and its professional judgment by saying you must do X number of courses at S4. I don't think that's the right judgment to make. In our curriculum choices, we've said, here is the framework, but you as professionals judge how you bring this to life. That's about trusting the profession. Our pay deal is about trusting the profession. It is about listening to what the profession has to say and empowering the profession to be influential in the choices that we take forward. So I'm very keen, and one of the commitments I made at the International Summit of the Teaching Profession with our teaching professional associations that were there was to work with the profession on encouraging greater professional development, on encouraging that sense of empowerment and agency and autonomy within the teaching profession to make sure that becomes a lived reality in our schools around Scotland. And that's a commitment that I want to fulfil, and it's one that I want to engage the profession about in the period going forward. And that very open invitation is here to the SSTA and to the other professional associations to work with us collaboratively. Now that we've got rid of the pay deal and all the rest of it, we've got a period with a clear line of sight where collaboratively the government, working with our local authority partners and our professional associations, has an opportunity to significantly strengthen Scottish education and ensure that we deliver more and more successfully on the agenda of excellence and equity. But I want to close with one plea to you, and I suppose, Mr. President, it's possibly the annual refrain that I make at this podium is for us to move the narrative on. Part of the challenge of the last couple of years is that we have been in a you have been in a campaign mode, I have been in the mode of responding to your campaign on pay and workload. And some of that involves highlighting what is the difficult, what is the challenge, what are the things that are not working so well, and the things that need to be remedied to support the arguments for a pay claim. I'm a politician, I know how these things work. But we've resolved that issue. And I think we've now got to change the narrative and to make the profession appear like what I think it is and what I see in schools around the country as a compelling and exciting, but of course demanding, profession to be in, because you are educating the young people of Scotland. You are giving them something they don't already have, and that's demanding and challenging and difficult, and I don't demur from that. But it's also rewarding and fulfilling and exciting and transformative for young people. And I don't think we promote the profession with a narrative that suggests everything is gloomy within the profession. I think we strengthen the profession by setting out what the profession actually achieves. And what the profession today is actually achieving is the best level of positive destinations achieved by young people in Scotland in the history of our country. The profession is achieving a deeper, broader level of qualification and capability amongst the young people of Scotland at record levels in our country. There are more young people from more deprived backgrounds achieving more in Scottish education today than at any time in the past. And better outcomes have been achieved for our young people. That's what I see in Scottish education. That's what the data says to me, and that's what I want to try to encourage us to share more about in the period going forward. But in so doing, I want us to work collaboratively together to strengthen the voice of the profession in this journey and to make sure that its contribution is to the fore. Because fundamentally, the best people to structure and to support the development and the direction of Scottish education will be the profession. So I'm committed to listening to the profession, engaging with the profession, and working with the profession to make sure that we strengthen Scottish education and we deliver the excellence and equity for all that is such a birthright of the young people of Scotland. Thank you very much.